Hello everyone, welcome to Lesson 2 of Think Academy's AP English Language Test Prep course. As you should remember from Lesson 1, we've talked up to this point mostly about free response questions, the 4 different free response questions that you have to answer, and we talked about some general tips and strategies that kind of relate to all of the different free response question types. We are going to continue to work on that today. We're going to take the information we talked about in lesson 1, and we are going to focus in on one specific free response essay, which is the argument essay. So, first of all, before we get into this, just a quick recap. I know you guys have videos you can just go back and rewatch, and if you do kind of forget things, I would recommend doing that. I do think that's helpful. But just a quick recap, right? We talked about theses, evidence, and claims, right? Your thesis is the big main thing that your entire essay is kind of focused on. Your claims are what your body paragraphs are going to be focused on. You have usually 3, but could be 2, could be 4 claims. Those are like the main arguments about why your thesis is correct. And then you have evidence that supports the claims. So that's kind of the main idea, the most important ideas we talked about in lesson 1. We are going to continue to work with those ideas both today and in lessons 3 and in lesson 4. But we're going to kind of add some more components into it now, talk about some of the other things that also go into your essay, specifically the argument essay. So let's talk about the argument essay first. It is the first essay type we're going to talk about. And what do we have to do for this essay? Well, your job with the argument essay, as we've kind of briefly touched on in lesson 1, is to come up with your own argument based on a given claim or idea and support that argument with evidence from your own knowledge or experiences. Unlike some of the other 2 essay types where you are given some sort of information or source or passage to pull evidence from, with the argument essay, you have to come up with your own evidence. You are given a few sentences of background information in the prompt, and you can use that background information. As we talked about in lesson 1, you might want to use that in your introductory paragraph to introduce the topic, but other than that, you're not really given anything else to work with. And there's pros and cons to this, right? One of the cons, obviously, is that it may be more difficult to come up with evidence when you don't have a definitive pool of given information to pull from. But at the same time, it's easier. You're not restricted, right? So you're not given evidence to work with, but you're also not limited to that evidence. You can pull out whatever evidence you want, whatever you have. You have more freedom in the direction that you take it and more freedom in the way that you craft your argument. So there's pros and cons to that. We talked about the essays generally last time. We talked about how they are composed of 3 different components: the thesis component, the evidence and commentary component, and the sophistication component. We talked about how the thesis and sophistication are each worth 1 point, and how evidence and commentary is worth 4. Now let's talk about specifics. Because for each essay type, even though the categories are the same, the specifics are a little bit different. So if you take a look here, the criteria to earn the 1 point, I'll zoom in a little bit to make this a little easier to see. The criteria to earn the maximum 1 point for your thesis is pretty straightforward. You just need to have a thesis that responds to the prompt and presents a defensible position. And this is something we talked about last time. That is all you need to do in order to get this point. You need to respond to the prompt with a thesis that presents a defensible position. The ways that you cannot get this point: you don't have a thesis, you don't have a defensible thesis, the thesis only restates the prompt, the intended thesis provides a summary of the issue with no apparent or coherent claim, right? You didn't pick a position, you just kind of restated the issue, or you just kind of gave a neutral kind of summary of the 2 different sides of the issue without picking your own side. Or you do have a thesis, but it does not respond to the prompt. Pretty straightforward. I think the thesis point is the easiest point to earn and the most consistent point to earn, because there's two very specific things you have to do. If you do those two things, you get the point. So yeah, thesis point, in order to earn it, you need a thesis. That thesis has to respond to the prompt, and that thesis has to present a defensible position. It has to pick a side, and it has to be a position that can be supported by evidence later in your essay. Evidence and commentary gets a little bit more complicated because there are a lot more points available here. So let's zoom in a little bit and see what the difference between 0 points, 1 point, 2 points, 3 points, and 4 points is. So let's start at the 4-point end. In order to achieve or to earn all of the points for evidence and commentary, you need evidence that provides specific evidence to support all claims in a line of reasoning. So evidence needs to support all claims in a line of reasoning. We'll talk about what a line of reasoning is in a second. Or in a little bit, maybe like 10 minutes, something like that. So evidence to support all claims, and we need commentary that consistently explains how the evidence supports a line of reasoning. We need both of these things in order to earn all of the points. Evidence that supports all claims, commentary that explains how the evidence supports the line of reasoning. 3 points, evidence that provides specific evidence to support all claims in a line of reasoning. That's the same from 3 to 4. And commentary explains how some of the evidence supports a line of reasoning. So if you support all of your claims with evidence, but you only have commentary to explain how some of the evidence is relevant, you only get 3 points instead of 4. If you have some specific relevant evidence, you don't support all your claims with evidence, but you support some of them with evidence, and you explain how some of the evidence relates to the line of reasoning or the argument, you would get 2 points. If you have some evidence, but it's mostly general and not specific to your claims, and if you summarize the evidence but don't explain how it supports the argument, you would get 1 point. And if there's like no evidence whatsoever, that's kind of how you would get 0 points. So pretty logical here, right? In order to get all of the points, you need to support all of your claims with evidence, and you need to have commentary that explains how all of the evidence supports your argument, supports your claims. And then there's also this discussion of a line of reasoning. Don't worry about that too much yet. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So again, presenting evidence is only half of what you have to do. You also need commentary that explains the relationship between your evidence, claims, and thesis. And we're going to talk, that's going to be one of our main focuses in today's lesson, is how to use this commentary, how to implement commentary into your essay. The final category, sophistication, is the most open-ended and kind of ambiguous category. It's only 1 point, and what it says here is that in order to earn the sophistication point, you must demonstrate sophistication of thought and or a complex understanding of the rhetorical situation. That's vague. What is sophistication of thought? What is a complex understanding of the rhetorical situation? It's not super clear. We will talk in future lessons specifically about the sophistication point and ways to earn this point, but it does give us some examples here. Responses that earn this point may demonstrate sophistication of thought and or a complex understanding of the rhetorical situation by doing any of the following. Crafting a nuanced argument by consistently identifying and exploring complexities or tensions, articulating the implications or limitations of an argument, by situating it within a broader context, making effective rhetorical choices that consistently strengthen the force and impact of the student's argument, employing a style that is consistently vivid and persuasive. Now, you don't have to do all of these things, right? And these are not the only ways to demonstrate sophistication or thought or a complex understanding of the rhetorical situation. We'll talk about this. I think it's either lesson 3 or 4. We'll talk about this a lot more. I think it's lesson 3. We're going to talk about this a lot more. And it's very kind of blunt about how you don't get any points. You get 0 points if you don't meet the criteria for 1 point. Not super helpful, but I guess it does make sense. So, yeah, don't worry about sophistication too much yet. There are a whole bunch of different ways to earn it. Essentially, what the sophistication point is a way of measuring how well you wrote your essay. Pretty much, if your essay is written in an interesting, engaging, persuasive way, you'll get the point. If it's written in a bland, unconvincing, sort of messy sort of way, you won't get the point. That's essentially the idea behind it. But we'll get into more specifics later. I've said that like 4 times. I apologize. But that's the rubric. 1 point for a thesis, 4 points for evidence and commentary, 1 point for sophistication. Now, we talked about commentary a whole lot. Let's now discuss how we write commentary, how we implement commentary into our essay, what commentary looks like in an essay, and what commentary is. So I have written here, commentary is the glue that links our claims, evidence, and thesis together. And that may seem kind of like a cliche analogy to compare something to glue, but it's true. You have all these components that we talked about in lesson 1, the claims, the evidence, the thesis, but just presenting those things isn't enough. Just throwing some claims and evidence in there without explaining how they relate to each other isn't an essay. It's just like a bullet point list, right? Commentary is kind of what differentiates a list with like bullet points of claims and evidence and an actual well-written essay, a well-written free response. As demonstrated by the rubric, it's not enough to simply present claims and evidence. We also need commentary to explain how the evidence supports the claims and how the claims support the thesis. So if our claim is recycling helps marine life, and our evidence is that they did some study that shows that recycling prevents plastic from ending up in the ocean, we then need commentary to connect those two. We need commentary that says something like, because recycling, or because less plastic is in the ocean, it's less likely that marine life will ingest it and die from ingesting it, right? Something that connects the evidence, explains why the evidence matters, why the evidence strengthens our claim. That's the idea. So how do we write commentary? Well, kind of like I just said, right? We want to explain the connection between the evidence and the claim. We want to show the reader, demonstrate to the reader why this evidence that I'm bringing up is relevant. What does this? Why am I mentioning this evidence? How does it support my claim? Why does it strengthen my claim? Why does it strengthen my argument? If you're having trouble figuring out how to do that, think about why you chose to include that evidence in the first place, right? There had to be a reason you chose to include that. Whatever that reason was, whatever reason you decided, yeah, this is good evidence, this is going to help support my claim, explain that thought process to the reader. Because if it was, if it made sense to you why that evidence supported that claim, if you explain it the same way, it'll probably make sense to your reader as well. And when you're writing commentary, you want to avoid using phrases like, this evidence is relevant because, or, this evidence supports my claim because. We talked about this in lesson 1 with like the thesis and the conclusion, right? We don't want to say in conclusion. We don't want to say my thesis is. Just say what you have to say. You don't need to kind of provide that meta commentary explaining to your audience, hey, this is evidence, right? They know. Just kind of explain the connection. Don't introduce it this way. You don't need to do that. So let's do some practice here. We have 2 claims here. For each of these claims, we want to come up with 2 pieces of evidence and provide commentary that explains the relevance of the evidence to the claim. So our first claim here, exposure to different ideas and perspectives can give people a more nuanced understanding of the topic at hand. Okay, so I have some evidence and commentary written out here. I'm going to copy and paste it over, and then we can talk about how it makes sense. Okay. I'm just going to put it at the bottom here for now so that it's easier to see. So I think I only put 1 piece of evidence here instead of 2. But what I wrote was, so again, our claim, exposure to different ideas and perspectives can give people a more nuanced understanding of the topic at hand. We want to support that idea. When engaging in conversation with someone that has a different perspective on a given topic, both individuals involved are forced to think about the reasoning behind their opinions and may find faults in their initial thought process. So that was my evidence. Before I get to the commentary, right, let's talk about, all right, why did I choose this as evidence? Well, if I want to support the idea that different ideas gives people a more nuanced understanding, then let me give some example or some way that this could be true. Right? That was my thought process. So I said, okay, what's some way that this could be true? Well, if people are having a conversation and they have different opinions, both of them, because they are having a conversation with each other and they're sharing their opinions with each other, both of them are forced to think about the reasoning behind not just the people they're talking with's opinion, but their own opinion, right? If they're having a conversation with someone that disagrees with them, they have to think about, why do I think this way? Right? Because in order for me to explain it to the person I'm talking to, I need to know why I have this opinion. And when they do that, they may find faults in their initial thought process. So that's my evidence. This example here supports the idea that exposure to different ideas can give people a more nuanced understanding of the topic. Now I need to explain what I just explained to you guys, right? I need to now explain that to the audience. So that's where my commentary comes in. As a result, these people may either do further research to better understand why their ideas are correct, or may have their opinions changed in some way. In both instances, the people involved in the conversation have come out of it with a better understanding of the issue. So I actually explained it way better here than I did to you guys. But yeah, see how it directly kind of links the evidence to the claim, right? I've explained how, in this example that I used in the evidence, both people involved come out with a better understanding of the issue. And that is what my claim says, right? I've directly kind of redirected my evidence back to the claim and explained why they are connected, why they work together. So now I want you guys to give this a shot. I am going to probably delete this. Let me see if I can move it up here and make it smaller so I have room for the second one. See. That's very small, but I guess it works. Okay, now I want you guys to give it a shot. Take a look at the second claim here. Come up with, the prompt here says 2 pieces of evidence and commentary for each of them. If you want to challenge yourself, go ahead, try to come up with 2. If you're not super confident yet, you can only come up with 1. But the big thing to focus on here is once you've come up with the evidence, focus on writing that commentary to connect the evidence back to the claim. So go ahead, pause this video, give it a shot, and when you are done, unpause it, and I'll give you my example for it. Oh, I actually did have a second example for the first one. I just forgot to copy it over. Whoops. All right. I don't have a ton of room here, so this may have to be kind of small. I hope you can still see that. But I came up with 2 examples here. I have 2 pieces of evidence and commentary that connects both of them. So the claim, when the technology is perfected, self-driving cars will be safer than human-controlled cars. My first example with evidence and commentary, self-driving cars should crash much less frequently than human-driven cars do. That's the evidence, right? And then my commentary, part of the requisite technology for self-driving cars is the vehicle's ability to know what other vehicles and objects are around it and to adjust accordingly. By removing human error such as blind spots, inattention, impaired driving, or the speed at which one can reach the brake pedal, that says reach 2 brake pedals, say the brake pedal, self-driving cars will result in significantly safer roads. So my evidence, self-driving cars should crash less frequently. My claim, when the technology is perfected, self-driving cars will be safer. And now my commentary connects this idea about how, about them crashing less frequently and how that makes them safer, right? By removing human error, significantly safer roads, right? I'm back to the claim. The claim is about being safe. Once I've presented the evidence, I use the commentary to explain the evidence and how the evidence relates to my claim about safer roads or about self-driving cars being safer. Let's look at the second example here. Self-driving cars also take the emotion out of driving. That's my second piece of evidence. Now, how does that relate to this claim? How does taking the emotion out of driving make them safer? Let's see. They removed road rage, tailgating, and other emotion-driven forms of intentional reckless driving from the equation, making travel safer for both the individual prone to angry driving as well as those around him or her. Okay, so now my commentary explains why taking the emotion out of driving makes them safer, right? Because it eliminates reckless driving, intentional reckless driving, and road rage from the equation. And by doing that, it makes travel safer. I hope this is starting to make some sense here. When we present the evidence, that is not enough. We also need to explain the evidence and explain how the evidence supports the claim. Okay, so I think we have some more practice here. Yeah. This is just one aspect of commentary. This is the most common, I think, important aspect of commentary, but commentary can also be used another way, and should also be used another way, and that is to connect the claims to the thesis. So the same way we use commentary to connect the evidence to the claims, we also do it to connect the claims to the thesis. I have this little diagram here. I meant to put it in this PowerPoint, but I don't think I did. So let me just see if I can copy and paste it onto here now. No, it won't let me. Okay, that's fine. I don't know if you guys remember from last lesson, I had that little diagram, right? Thesis was in a box at the top, and then we had 3 boxes that said claims with like arrows, right? And then at the bottom, it was 3 more boxes for each that said evidence, and those evidence had arrows pointing to claim, and then claim had arrows pointing to thesis. Imagine all of those arrows said commentary on them. That's what commentary is all about. Connecting evidence to claim, and then also connecting claim to the thesis. So let's practice that now. Let's practice using commentary to connect our claims to our thesis. We have 2 examples here, and for each of them, we want to provide commentary that relates the claim to the thesis. So let's look at number 1. Our thesis, freedom of speech is an integral element of a free and progressive society. That's supposed to be a period. Our claim, exposure to different ideas and perspectives can give people a more nuanced understanding of the topic at hand. How can we connect that to the thesis? How can we connect this claim, which presumably is one of our 3 claims, right? One of our body paragraphs, back to the thesis? Here is the example that I came up with for this first one. I'm going to put it up here. And I think I can make this a little bit bigger. Yeah. Okay. So I wrote, a more informed populace with a nuanced understanding of complex ideas can better work together to figure out the best solutions to problems and move society forward. Well, how does that make sense? Let's see. Exposure to different ideas and perspectives can give people a more nuanced understanding. If we're connecting that to freedom of speech being integral, we can explain that having a more informed populace with a nuanced understanding, right? Having a population that has a nuanced understanding of complex ideas can better work together to figure out the best solutions to problems and move society forward, right? Move society forward goes to progressive society, and it's explaining how these nuanced ideas or these nuanced understanding will allow society to be progressive. Hopefully that makes sense. I wish I could answer questions live, but can't do that in the video format, unfortunately. Go ahead and give this a shot with the second one here. Pause the video, practice it, give it your best effort, and when you're done, unpause it, and I will talk about mine. Okay. Our thesis. Self-driving cars are worth investing in as they will be beneficial for humanity in the long run. Our claim, when the technology is perfected, self-driving cars will be safer than human-controlled cars. we need to connect this claim about self-driving cars being safer to our thesis about self-driving cars being worth investing in and being beneficial. How did I do that? I did that by saying the significant increase in safety on the roads provides a benefit to humanity that is worth any amount of time and money required to achieve it. So I took this idea about increase in safety in our claim, and I tied it back to the thesis by saying that the increase in safety provides a benefit to humanity, which is part of what I said in the thesis, and that because it provides that benefit to humanity, because the increase in safety is that beneficial, it is worth any amount of time and money required to achieve it, which goes to this part about it being worth investing in. So those are our two types of commentary and how to include them in an essay. We write commentary that connects our evidence to our claims. We write commentary that connects our claims to our thesis.